So it's just on 2:30. So let's just wait a minute or so for any latecomers to join us. And anybody having difficulty logging on, we'll start in about a minute. Okay, so let's kick off. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Taylor, Dean of the WashU Olin Business School, and I'm very, very excited to be kicking off our first Leadership Perspective event for the 2021-2022 academic year. As a top business school, as a leading business school, we believe it's crucially important to contribute meaningful thoughts to the marketplace of ideas. And this series brings you to the gateway of ideas, innovation, and inspiration with informative and timely speakers and events. And today's event is no exception in that respect. It's a very great honor to have with us Lisa Nichols, the CEO and co-founder of Technology Partners. Lisa and WashU Olin communications professor Staci Thomas will be discussing women and entrepreneurship in the tech sector. And they will touch on the importance of keeping a focus on values-based, data-driven leadership, so the hallmark of the Olin approach to business. And after they conclude their conversation, we'll move into a Q&A session. So please send your questions through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many questions as we can in the allotted time. So now, without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to introduce today's guest. I'm delighted to welcome Lisa Nichols. Lisa is the CEO and co-founder of Technology Partners, and that's a women-based enterprise and a provider of premier IT staffing solutions and software. Lisa and her husband Greg founded Technology Partners in 1994, driven by their passion to revolutionize the staffing industry with their transparent business model, and they co-lead the business today. Technology Partners services include IT staffing, custom mobile and web applications, IT leadership development, and a range of other services. And Lisa and Greg have made it their priority from day one to create mutual wins for employees, clients, and their communities. And this has, in large part, led to Technology Partners winning many awards. And to name a few, there's a long list. Okay, they won Top Workplace by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in 2018-2020, plus additional recognition in 2018 for Best Work-Life Flexibility. They won Best of Staffing Diamond status by Clearly Rated. What that means is that customers and clients rate their customer service as world-class with an NPS greater than 80%, which is basically something like 3 times the industry average. They won largest temporary staffing firm and largest software development firm for 2020 by the St. Louis Business Journal. They were voted one of the most innovative companies in St. Louis by the St. Louis Small Business Monthly. And Lisa has also been named among the most influential businesswomen by the St. Louis Business Journal. Lisa's most recent project is her podcast, Something Extra, which is produced and recorded at Technology Partners. Lisa interviews leaders from around the world and across the for-profit and non-profit spaces. And each episode explores the guest's journey and what they believe is the something extra that every true leader should possess or possesses. So Lisa, we're very honored that you could join us today. Next, I'd like to welcome Staci Thomas. And Staci has more than 15 years of experience in consumer and industrial product marketing communications. And she began her career as a Mandarin translator for the US Air Force, working to lower cultural barriers and increase communication effectiveness. Staci then went on to lead communication initiatives at Magnatech Electric Motors, Sigma Aldrich, Emerson Electric, and Life Technologies, among others. And she's been teaching, I'm delighted to say, at WashU Olin for 8 years, most recently serving as the Assistant Director of English Language Programs. And her focus is on providing an engaging, challenging environment that offers students relevant real-world communication experience here at Olin. So, Staci, Lisa, we're really grateful to have both of you with us, and I'm sure you're ready to get to today's discussion. So, Staci, I'll let you get started. You're muted.
Thank you, Dean Taylor, so much for the introduction. Lisa, I have been truly looking forward to this conversation. I know it'll be a fun, engaging conversation, and I'm really happy to see you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, Staci, I'm excited as well. I know that you and I are going to have fun because in our other conversations, we've always had fun. So I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so grateful to WashU for putting this speaker series on. I think to Dean Taylor's comments earlier, it is so important to make sure that we hear those voices out there and to understand people's leadership journey. I also just want to give a special shout out to my dear friend, Dorothy Kittner, for the invitation. So I'm very excited to be with you today.
Thank you. And yes, Dorothy deserves all kinds of accolades. So I would agree. So Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off because the very core of this conversation, which is helping women enter into and succeed in the tech industry, I feel like we need to kind of have a common denominator as a starting point. We know that only 25% of tech employees are women. And I'm kind of curious why that is, and how does the tech industry differ from other industries in such a way that results in this low percentage of female representation?
Well, Staci, to your point, I mean, yes, we have made a lot of progress. But we have a long way to go. As far as why that is, I seriously believe that it really needs to start at a younger age. And I've had so many tech leaders on the podcast, and I will tell you that some of them were inspired by grandparents, some of them were inspired by teachers, but there's a common thread that there was this innate curiosity at a very early age. Bhavani Amirthalingam is the Chief Data Information Officer for Ameren, and very successful woman in tech. And I can remember Bhavani talking about, she grew up in Bangalore, India. And I can remember her talking about when she was 10 years old, they introduced computers into her school. And so she voluntarily now went on Saturdays just to get more exposure because she was so fascinated. I'm not sure that I would have gone on a Saturday, but Bhavani did. Christine Swan runs digital farming for Bayer. And if you hear Christine talk, I mean, she really just always had this love of the math and sciences. And then she actually had a teacher speak into her and said, this might be something that you want to consider. Dana Lorberg is an EVP, retired EVP at MasterCard, very successful. And she just says she's always been a girl geek. From a very early age, she just considers herself a girl geek. What many people, Staci, may not realize is Ada Lovelace was born in 1815. And Ada is really the mother of software programming, if you can believe that. And she was born in 1815. Her dad was a mathematician, and he really demanded that in her private tutoring that she had a lot of math instruction. Well, she was at 18 years old, was very talented mathematically, and met Charles Babbage, and people might recognize that name as the father of computers. But she wrote the very first algorithm for one of the first machines that had traditionally been done on paper, and that was 1815. So, I do believe at an early age, we have to inspire something. And we have a lot of wonderful organizations. And I know that you and I are going to talk about that a little bit, that are really encouraging STEM, but we need to keep building on that. Marian Edelman, some people may have heard this quote before, but she said, you can't be what you don't see. And I think that young girls need to see women, successful women in tech of all shapes, sizes, and ethnicities, and see themselves that they could do that too. And that's why I love movies, Staci, like Hidden Figures.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that movie, it is such a powerful movie. These women were mathematicians that helped put a man on the moon. And young girls need to see that, hey, they did that. I can be a part of something like that too. So I think we have to start earlier. I really do think we need to start earlier with these girls.
And I'm going to come to that, but it's funny, you mentioned some of these women that made these big strides in tech, and one that I'm not sure if you knew about, but it was Hedy Lamarr. She's kind of the mother of the cell phone technology, which she developed for a naval navigation, a missile navigation system in World War II. So yeah, I mean, making strides a long time ago, but I think even back then there was a lot to overcome. And I agree with you on the starting young, but our educators do such a fantastic job of engaging young girls in the STEM fields in elementary school and holding that through. But there's all this research that shows they drop off in college. And so what I'm wondering is, why is that? And how does this affect the applicant pool? If we only have 25% of employees that are female, is that applicant pool even equal? Can we get it above that if we don't make sure that the applicant pool is solid?
Sure. Well, I can tell you right now, there's not parity in the applicant pool. I actually had our National Recruiting Center go into our own talent pool and look at data from, several months back. Okay. Traditionally, like in any given month, the number of females that will apply for these jobs are anywhere from 13 to 17%, Staci. Only 13 to 17% is what our average is. Now, if we have an HR coordinator, if we have a recruiter, 80% of those applicants are female. But yeah, there is not parity there.
Well, but is this an issue of want? I mean, why are women falling off when they get to a certain level? They tend to drop off of interest. So are we crushing their souls, or is there something else you think that might be at play?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk a long time about that. I think part of it too, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but I think again, going back to very early age, Staci, I think females are programmed not to like math and science, or not to think that they're very good at it. And, this starts at a very early age. And I went and looked at just a little bit of the Disney shows. And I'm just going to tell you, nothing against Disney. I love Disney, but I think we need to push back on this. And I think we need to stop these stereotypes, because I think we're boxing these young girls in. So like I just pulled a few of these. So Phineas and Ferb is one of the Disney shows out there. It's 2 boy scientists and 1 ditzy girl. Yes. Good Luck Charlie. The smart brother is the one that's always inventing stuff in that Disney show. Jesse is another one out there. I know our daughter Allie likes Jesse, but it's a geeky brother, who's really into science. The cool brother isn't. The sister's kind of ditzy, but you know what that is showing? Mm-hmm. That's saying science does not equal cool. And I think we've got to push back on this, Staci. I really do.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting you say that, because I had my own experience, and that was, I was a straight A student in all subjects through high school. But I process information differently, I think, than a lot of students that study STEM do. And so I need to approach it from a big picture, maybe coming from a different angle to really understand it. Mm-hmm. And I asked a question of a teacher. Can you tell me the practical application here? What does this look like in the real world, if you will? And that teacher told me I was no good at it. And from that was it. That was my moment where, despite all the evidence to the contrary, I took that person's word to heart.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's so important. I know we're going to talk about that. I know we're going to talk about the voices, the inside voices and the outside voices. So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about you for a second, if you don't mind. You don't fit the stereotypical tech profile, right? So tech is a niche, if you will, but your skills and strengths are they're broad. And maybe I'm wrong. I wouldn't define you as a tech person. I would define you as a servant leader, a project manager, a collaborator, networker, an exceptional communicator. But those are things that fit all fields. What characteristics do you have that make you specifically well-suited to tech?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for recognizing all those things in me. I can put all of those things on my LinkedIn profile now because Staci Thomas says this. But yeah, you're right. You're precisely right. I mean, according to Strength Finders, I love Strength Finders, by the way. Staci, I know you're a big assessment person as well. We've talked about that, but my top strengths are connectedness, maximizer, belief, input, and positivity. Those are my top 5 strengths. So I'm going to dive into just a couple of these. When you talk about being a maximizer, average is not the standard for a maximizer. Excellence is the standard. So for me, every single day, I am trying to be a more excellent version of myself than I was yesterday. And I think, probably guys do this too. Women do this a lot. We have this, we have a propensity a lot to want to compare ourselves to others, the comparison thing. But listen, I wasn't called to be Staci Thomas. I was called to be Lisa Nichols. So I need to make sure that I'm a better version of myself and bringing that excellence. Well, when it comes to our clients, we're very customer centric, and one of our core values is exceeding expectations. So we want to make sure that we are bringing excellence, to each and every client, that we really get in their business and make sure that we understand so that we can be an innovative anticipator for them, helping them get, reach their goals. So I think that excellence with entrepreneurship, with running your own business, that's universal, right? The other one that I would say is belief. So at my core, it's my core beliefs that really drive my behavior, and that really doesn't change. But when you have a high belief, you also know that the work that you're doing, you want it to be meaningful work. And Staci, I can tell you this, over the years, I have come to appreciate so much the power of technology and the power of technology to improve lives. And, so I hope that my enthusiasm and my passion around that will disperse out into our team and help them understand the bigger why. I'm just going to name a few of these for you real quickly, because I think it's just a great point to drive home and why technology is so important. Sarah Hill. Sarah Hill is in Colombia. Sarah Hill is the CEO for Helium. She's using AR and VR to help people manage their stress. Also, for disabled veterans to have an experience that maybe they would not have otherwise. There's people like Dinesh Nagda. Some of the WashU people may know Dinesh, but he's the CEO for Resilient. And what Resilient is doing is they're using robotic avatars to bring the best doctors in the world to any neighborhood. Now that's in improving the world. People like Dan Clark, who I actually introduced you to, Staci. He's the CEO for Brain FM. I'm a huge believer in Brain FM. They're a company out of New York, but what they're doing is they're combining artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and musicians to help people get into these amazing states of focus and sleep. I mean, it's improving the world. So that belief really fuels my passion. And even though, I'm not really necessarily a technologist at heart, I mean, that is so important, because that passion then, whether you love technology or not, whether you love it or not, Staci, you cannot deny the power of technology to change the world. And you know what? If you want to make a dent in the world, technology is a great place to start.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, we're always telling people, find your passion, work your passion, live your passion. And then we hear, all the jobs are going to be in STEM fields.
Yes.
And so I like this idea of saying, okay, not only I can discover my passion, but I can work that in in a tech field, in an entrepreneurship field. And one of the things that you just mentioned there is that people think that, to go into tech, you need to be a technologist.
Yes.
Right. So
Right.
if you don't mind, let's talk about that for just a second. If we extract that from the equation, what strengths and skills does someone need to bring to the table to succeed in this field?
Right. Well, I mean, obviously you have to have the hard skills, and we'll talk about that. But, we've done a whole study, and there's 15 core competencies that a technologist needs. But one of those is agility.
Yeah.
And Staci, we all know, and we can't really go into it here, but we all know of companies and technologists that have not been agile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have not future-proofed themselves. And it's so important as a technologist. Listen, the average shelf life of a technical skill, Staci, is 18 months. It's 18 months. So what does that mean? You need to constantly be learning. You need to be constantly looking at what is rising and what's increasing and what's shrinking, and being able to look around the bend. You need to do that as an individual, and you need to do that as a company. You need to constantly be looking for that. So yeah, agility is one of those.
And I do think, as you mentioned that, you mentioned the agility and the future proofing, because technology is so pervasive in every field, that this is something everybody should be looking for. And it's exhausting. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
It's exhausting.
It's absolutely exhausting to stay on that.
Exhausting. Yeah. And sometimes we've had technologists that say, I'm ready to retire because this is exhausting. You have to constantly be learning, but that is one of those things. Another one of my core strengths is input, and I'm a learner. I hope I never stop wanting to learn. I mean, we've always got something more that we can learn, right? And that helps keep us relevant as well.
Right. But it's a job in its own right, staying relevant, staying on top of industry trends. And so question then, how do you future-proof yourself?
Well, just what we just talked about. I mean, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly saying, what else should I be thinking about right now? And,
what about future-proofing the company?
Well, same thing. I mean, our technologists, our people are reading, they are looking at the broad world. I tell you what, the other thing I would say about this, Staci, is that we learn a lot from our clients. Mm. We do. We listen to our clients. Our clients also are doing the same thing, right? And like whether, and I'll just drop a few names here, like a Panera is a big client of ours. Enterprise is a big client of ours. They're also looking around the bend, right? They're also looking around the bend. So really staying close to our customer. I've always said this, if you really want to know where your business needs to go, ask your customer. Mm-hmm. They will tell you. They will tell you, because they're also doing their own research and making sure that their business. So for our business in particular, because we are servicing companies like this, we need to lean into them, and say, what is keeping you up at night, and how can we help? And so that's a way for us to stay innovative and relevant.
Amazing. Okay. So we've got agility and future proofing. Mm-hmm. What else? What do I need to bring to the table?
Business acumen. Business acumen. And, no longer, I mean, for so many years, technology was really more in the background, not so much anymore. The technology is driving the business in many cases. And you already said it, Staci. I mean, we hear CIOs all the time and companies all the time. We're not, I'll just say MasterCard, for instance. We're not a credit card processing company. We're a technology company. Mm-hmm. And so business acumen. So we say, and this all the time at Technology Partners, we are business professionals first, technologists second. It's not technology for technology's sake. You need to understand. Now, will our technologists always understand financials like our controller or our CFO does? No. And you're not expected to, but you need to understand broadly about the different business functions. You need to understand your business. You need to understand that, because the better you can understand that, Staci, the more able that technologist is going to be able to help the business figure out how, what are our opportunities here? What are our opportunities for technology to optimize what we're doing, automate what we're doing?
it seems like it would be really challenging for, or it would be a rare breed to have somebody who could come in with the hard skills, the technology prowess, and the business insight. So is there, if you were to make a recommendation, if you said, okay, this is the business field you need to study, is it finance? Is it accounting? What are we going to most benefit from understanding when we move into the tech field?
Well, goodness gracious, that's a hard question, because on one hand, HR is so central, right? Because it's about the talent attraction. And especially if you are in middle management, if you're that person that's attracting the talent, you need to understand what are those things right now that's going to be attractive to the talent to want them to come here. So HR is really important, but I would say financials. I mean, if you don't understand your financials and how the business works, that is really important too, because obviously technology is a big spend. Right? In any company, it's a really big spend. So you need to understand how that all fits in. It's hard. I mean, I think if you're really wanting to be a technologist, I think really just having a very broad knowledge of all those areas, you're best suited. But I know that you want to talk about hard skills, and we have not really talked about hard skills.
I do. I want to talk about hard skills, and I want to talk about the skills that might be specific to women to succeed in what is kind of this notoriously male-dominated environment.
Right.
And so where would you like to go with that? Do you want to talk about women first, or do you want to talk?
Well, we'll talk about the hard skills. So here's the thing that I would say about this. A lot of times people think, okay, I'm going to do network administration, or I need to learn about project management. But listen, I liken it a lot, Stacy, to the medical field. If I had a heart issue, I'm not going to call in an orthopedic surgeon. I'm going to call in the best cardiologist, right? Well, the same thing goes with technology. The technology is so broad. So I would say, if you are really, interested in possibly data analytics, you don't necessarily, it's okay to have a little bit of knowledge of network administration. You don't want to go far down in that, though. You don't want to go deep, because it's not going to help you if you want to be a data scientist. It's not going to help you if you want to be a web developer, right? So I think what really is important here with the hard skills, I think people need to be exposed to a lot of different things, figure out what really interests you, figure out what really piques your interest. I mean, there's honestly not a field in technology that you can go in right now. I mean, even COBOL programmers, we still need COBOL developers. And, occasionally I would say maybe not as much Fortran and assembly languages, but definitely, we need data scientists. Data science is such a huge field right now. It's booming. Big data. Never before have we had as much data as we have now. But if you don't understand how that data can be useful, then that's all it is. It's just data, right? So
yeah, and as a communications professor, I'll put this spin on it too. It's one thing to have that data, to even be able to visualize that data, but if you can't explain that data and talk about why that information matters and create a narrative out of it, it's not going to go very far. The information kind of stays siloed. And so I'm going to kind of, then we'll take a spin back here and let's talk about
for women.
Yeah,
for women
let's talk about skills women need. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this, and this is everyone, right? But confidence. We've done a lot of study in this, Stacy, and one of the things that we see, especially with women, is a lack of confidence. And we could probably spend the whole session just on this. I mean, there's a lot of behavioral studies and stuff that show 70%, and this is women and men alike, 70% of people will say at some point in their career that they feel like a phony, and we hear the imposter syndrome. I think it especially plagues women because women just think, I'm not smart enough. I'm not enough. I don't have enough knowledge. But, I remember Dana talking one time about early on, Dana Lorberg, and she is a retired EVP from Mastercard, very successful. And she said one time, Stacy, in her early career, she said that she would go into a meeting and she would have this wonderful light bulb idea, but she wouldn't say anything. She would leave the meeting. She would tell a colleague, And then the colleague would bring that idea to the forefront, and no longer would it be Dana's idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this happened a few times. And then Dana said she found her voice, and so confidence with women, and just know that you do have something to contribute.
And so I want to ask you, from your perspective, you've got some technical ability, you've got the business acumen. How long did it take before you really felt confident in the skills that you were bringing to the table?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I will tell you, and I would just tell you this, I have this much technical skills. I'm the CEO of a technology company. I have this much technical skills, but I'm surrounded by a lot of really smart women and men alike.
Yeah.
So confidence is, you and I kind of talked a little bit about this, but we talk about, okay, how can we increase our confidence? How can we increase that? And I want to back up a minute and just say, I think before confidence, there is something called courage. And it's the courage to step out. It's the courage to go into the uncomfortable. It's a courage to adopt to new situations. I think that comes before anything, and we have to have the courage. And then, once we step out, Staci, it's competence. Once we gain competence, then we become more confident. And I told you a few weeks ago when you and I talked, we talked about this anecdotal story of our little 8-year-old grandson, Sawyer. And he has really gotten into his little scooter. And I said, we've been encouraging him. There is this really cool skate park that's not too far from our house. And we said, we'll take your scooter over there and you can try out all these little, tunnels and ramps and this. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, what is it? He's lacking confidence because he's not really competent yet, right? And you could call us bad grandparents if you want, but hey, it worked. There was a certain little gujitsu toy that he was really wanting. And so we said, okay, if you will go and you'll take your scooter to this awesome skate park and you just try it out, then we'll get you that gujitsu. And it worked. So I'm not recommending bribing. But for us, it's more important for us to get him out of his comfort zone, right? So we get to the skate park and, he was so timid at first and he's just riding his little scooter on all the flat spaces. And then, there was one little ramp and it went through a tunnel and down a ramp. So he walked his scooter up the ramp, went through the tunnel and then walked his scooter down the ramp. And then before you know it, he's going up and down and up and down, So it's a perfect example. It's a perfect example of, as his competence was growing, so did his confidence.
Well, and to start with the courage. Right. He had to have the courage to do it. You bribed him to be brave. I don't know that that's the takeaway for the workplace.
Right.
But whatever works. Right. So, however you can get people to take those bold moves and to step out, because you're right. Nothing inherently good comes from doing easy things and from refusing to take risks.
Yeah. And for sure, every time you do something, Staci, every time you step out of your comfort zone, guess what? You're going to build that confidence, and then it gives you the courage then to go to the next thing. And what I always say is you just need to pull it back. You need to say, okay, look at the things that I've accomplished. Look when I did that. And guess what? I didn't die. Yeah. So I could do it again. Right. And so it's a thing that just builds on itself. And I feel like we need to really do that with women. And so many times and I think this is men and women alike, we need to be looking for those things in people that we can call out. And I can't even tell you how many leaders I've talked to, Staci, that somebody called something out in them. It is a common thread. Somebody called something out in them that they did not even see in themselves. And it's just so important, for us to be on the lookout for those things.
It's a really interesting point. I was just looking at some of the comments that are coming in from our audience, and I'm looking forward to one, because there's somebody that hit on that right there, the advocacy And I look forward to our Q&A when we can bring that up. Meanwhile, I'm going to kind of pull this back to you because one of your accomplishments, right, is you innovated this, you created this. And I want to ask you about innovation because, and I'll tie it to that advocacy point. It was you and your husband, Greg, co-founded Technology Partners together, right? Mm-hmm. And so what strengths did you each, or do you each bring to the table that helps you innovate and creates this dynamic partnership?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, Greg is innately a systems thinker. And and I know we're going to talk a little bit about something extra, but one of his something extras is truly to look at anything and see how it could be better. And so whether that's a process in the organization, whether that is a tool to help automate a process, I mean, he's just very, very good at looking at that. And so, he really subscribes to the Kaizen. Some of your students may have studied Kaizen, and really Kaizen is all about the incremental change. And sometimes you could have a quantum leap when you're into innovating. But oftentimes it just comes from those small incremental changes over time that really brings transformation. So I would say that is what he really brings to the table with innovation. He just sees things and sees how to make things better. I think for me, I'm definitely an optimist. I try to be a realistic optimist. Sometimes I'm an unrealistic optimist, but I think I'm an optimist. I'm really seriously not afraid of taking a risk.
Okay.
And trying new things. It really doesn't scare me. And, what's the worst that can happen? That you screw up and you learn from it and you move forward. And let me tell you something.
Or the worst thing that happens is your husband says, let's do some incremental change.
That's right. That's exactly right. And really, that is probably a better way to do it because then you don't fall as far, right? I will tell you, after 27 years, though, we've had so many opportunities to learn from our mistakes, right? And to move forward. But, anybody in business, anybody that is an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take some risk. The old adage, no risk, no reward, right? You've got to take risk. I like to call it calculated risk and also just experimentation. That's what's needed in innovation. Stacy, it's experimentation. Try it, time box it, say, let's try it, see if it works. And, if it doesn't, pivot and move forward.
Yeah, that comes right back to your courage comment, right?
Yeah.
You've got to take that plunge. So we have a few minutes left before we move into the Q&A. And I want to talk about your leadership development program. And I would like to talk about something extra too. Okay. Right. And so talk to us about TechLX. This is your technology leadership program. What does that look like? Who's eligible? How does it
work?
Yeah.
How does it work? Well, talk about innovation, right? And that's something that we've done before, but we had the courage and stepped out. So I'm so excited, Stacy. I'm so excited about this program. I'm so passionate about it. We have been involved in the CIO community for 8 or 9 years now. And one of the common threads that we would hear every time from CIOs is there's not that next level down from the CIO that has the leadership skills really to go to the next level. And so we partnered in 2019, good friend, known now for over 10 years, Dan Roberts. I think he even used to teach Summit for Kate at WashU way back in the day. But we've known Dan for over 10 years. He's the CEO for Willett and Associates out in New Hampshire. So we partnered with him. And really, this program is really to take the high potentials in an organization and help them go to the next level. So there's several components to this. We have in-person workshops. It's a year-long program, by the way, but we have in-person workshops. We have we limit the cohort to about 25 participants, and then we will put sub cohorts in there. So it's a sub cohort of 5. So throughout that year, the sub cohort is working on real life challenges, real life things that, some of the companies are facing. They're working on that. They're getting peer-to-peer networking. We technology partners, we facilitate a lot of networking for these groups, just so that they get to know their peers in a like kind position in another company. And then a big piece of this is every participant is paired with a mentor. So this is either a CIO or retired CIO, and that mentor's walking through the journey with them that year. But the whole objective of this truly is to build that talent pool so that our region really can succeed in the global marketplace. Right. And we've got to have it. I mean, we've already alluded to that a few times, Staci, that every company can benefit from technological advances, but they need the technology leadership to do that. So we have now had we've had over 180 participants go through the program. We have had 80 plus companies involved and over 75 mentors that have been a part of it. So that's
amazing. So that's a lot of lives changed.
It is. And you know what? Here's the thing. You change a life, that's a force multiplier, right? Because then that life goes on to change others. And so we just love it. We love it. And we just launched our 7th cohort. So the program, if you're interested, the program, these participants are actually recommended by their leadership in their company. And so they're recommended to go through the program. And if you would like to learn more, please reach out to me. And I'm sure that you'll give my contact information at the end.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I'm sure that there are definitely going to be some audience members that are interested, because we're touching on so many of the questions that are coming through in our Q&A. And I would remind our audience again, if you have anything you'd like to ask, please go ahead and pop that right into the Q&A, and hopefully we can get around to that question. And so before we close, I want to discuss something extra, because it's the name of your podcast, because it's your core philosophy. What is it? What does it mean to have something extra?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm so passionate about this too. I love this. So it is truly something extra for me. I happen to believe, Staci, that every person is fearfully and wonderfully made. Every person has special gifts that they've been given. And so the inspiration for something extra is really our youngest daughter, Allie. Allie is our youngest, was born with Down syndrome. So if you know anything about Down syndrome, you also can sometimes hear it referred to as trisomy 21. That means that there are 3 chromosomes, 21st chromosomes. So she scientifically has something extra, but when you get to know her, she's got so many something extras that make her uniquely her. And so the whole goal with the Something Extra podcast is really to have leaders on the podcast talk about their leadership journeys, and then the something extras that they believe every leader needs. And so for me, I mean, we have now published the 150th episode just launched today. And again, this was not something we knew what to do. We didn't know what we were doing. We seriously didn't. But I will tell you now, 3 years in, I am so proud of our team. I seriously think the way we do it, and there's a lot of people in the process, is the gold standard. I really do. So over time, our competence, our confidence, all of those things, have really increased, but we started with courage, right? We started with courage. And I know for me, I'm such a better person. Again, going back to my strength finders, I'm an input person. So I'm a voracious reader. I love to research. I love to learn. But one of the ways that I have always learned, one of the ways I've always grown in my professional and personal life is through people. Mm-hmm. And learning from other people. And so for me, I think, just being able to inspire, educate, encourage, if we can encourage one person, Staci, to think a little bit differently, to have a little paradigm shift, to maybe believe in themselves a little bit more, to just encourage them in their journey, even when it gets tough. Because, some of these leaders have really hard beginnings, really hard beginnings. It's never just a cakewalk, right? But if we can do that, if we can inspire one person, again, it's going to be a force multiplier.
I really like that. I like that model. And, I'll tell you too, let me, for our audience, I'm going to be a testimonial here. I love the Something Extra podcast. They're just bright, engaging segments that offer something tangible, good takeaways to think about and apply to your career. Lisa, I'm going to open us up to our Q&A. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives on this topic. And this has definitely ignited a few questions. So if you don't mind, we'll take a few now.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. And so I'm going to start with a question from Sean. And he says, here's a phenomenon I've experienced in tech at top firms. It cannot be overstated how critical it is that you have someone on the inside to vouch for you and recommend you. That's the advocacy we were kind of talking about. Recruiters love this because it makes their job mountains easier than sifting through countless resumes. Consequently, we see a lot of top tech firms over-indexing with cisgender white men. Loads of homogeneity. How do we break the cycle and open up the opportunities to everyone?
Well, when that's happening, that is not right. It's not right. First of all, Stacy, I mean, there are so many studies out there. I don't have any anecdotal, I don't have any stats right at my fingertips right now. There's so many studies out there, though, that tell you that diversity in the business is good for the business on all fronts, even down to profitability. I don't know what that particular stat is, but you can find it. Go out there and Google it, that even those companies that have diversity in their ranks are so much more profitable. So the onus really comes back to the companies and the people that are hiring these people. It's wrong. You want the best talent out there. You don't, I've always said, because people have asked me a lot, well, how, it's such a male dominated field, how is a woman, how has that, been for you? And I'm like, listen, first of all, you know what, you do have to be competent. Worry about your competence, worry about bringing value, not necessarily you, as long as you're bringing value, worry about that. And then, if it's still not a case where you see people moving up that are diverse, it's probably time to go find another firm.
And I think it's interesting too, so often when we think about diversity and the value of diversity, we want to assign it to some sort of physical or genetic trait, and versus thinking about the value of the diversity of thought that comes with all those experiences and that brings to the table.
Yes.
Let me throw another question at you here. This one's from Subela. In your experience, what's the best networking platform or place to find tech specialists?
Oh, that's a great one. Well, there's a few places in St. Louis. Reach out to me on this and I can connect you. Lori Burr-Kemper here in St. Louis, she and her husband, Brad, own a company, and she is in the tech space, and she started Women in Tech. She brought the Women in Tech. I think that originated, I want to say, out of Washington, D.C. So there's chapters all over the country, but I guess it's been a couple of years ago now, started that in St. Louis. So there's a Women in Tech. You can get involved in that. LaDan Kempfer. Also, I think it's called Women in Tech Exchange that she started, that she leads. That's a great place to plug in. As you get a little bit further along in your career, a great one would be SIM. So the Society for Information Management here in St. Louis. You could reach out to Eric Gorham on that. Eric is the CIO for Regis Commission here in St. Louis, and he is very, very involved in the SIM chapter for St. Louis. So there's just a few areas. I could probably think of a few more, Stacy, if we had a little bit more time, but there's a few to just get you started.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And Subela, I'll go ahead and say this. If you need a recap on that, maybe pop it into the Q&A again, and we'll see if we can't put that back in the chat for you. Okay, we have one from Allison, and it is, Lisa, how do you incorporate your podcast into your business plan, and how do you select the speakers?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, the speakers, when I started, they're basically the people that I have on are people that I know their story or what's happening now. And I'm so glad that I've done this. But what I have happened now is people reach out to me and say, can I be on? Yeah, I would like to explore being on your podcast. Well, certainly it's a brand. It's part of my brand. So I'm very careful about who I select. I want to make sure that the person that I have on, I mean, obviously diversity is great. But I just want to make sure that it's in keeping with what we're trying to do with the podcast. But I will tell you, Stacy, the gentleman that I told you about, Dan Clark, that's the CEO for Brain FM. He was one that reached out to me and said, hey, can I be on podcast? So what I said was 15 minutes. Yeah, I'd love to get on a call with you 15 minutes. And I knew 2 minutes in, oh my goodness, yes, I want this guy on the podcast. So yeah, I have a running list of people, for the podcast as far as how it fits into the business plan overall. So technology partners, I will just tell you, we have a staffing side of our business, we have a solution side of our business, and then we have leadership.
Okay.
As part of our business. So our TechLX falls under that. The technology leadership experience falls under leadership. We're very involved with the HMG Summit. We are a driver for that every year in St. Louis. That falls under there. We're also a founding member of the CIO Inspire for CIOs. And that is something that we just rolled out. There'll be Orbi Awards for CIOs, all kinds of great things. That falls under there. And then something extra falls under there. So it's really falls under our leadership pillar. So great question. Great question, Allison.
It is a good question. And I think that's a fantastic answer, right? It's very calculated and purposeful. And, as the podcast has gotten legs, people contact you. That's really nice. And I think, as you drive into that and saying, okay, what's our point here? And what's the something extra that we're going to discuss at this point? So you anchor it on that and go. I'm going to give you another question here. From Sean, do you see any specific verticals or industries that are disproportionately behind the tech curve in 2021? What are they and why is that the case?
Mm-hmm. Well, this one's so important. And I feel like this one would be, if you're looking for a particular industry to dig into, I think that this is a great one, is healthcare. And I think anybody in healthcare would tell you that healthcare is a little bit behind the curve. They need a lot of help. So, but, we're making great strides. Like I said, I mean, more is being done all the time. We're actually working with WashU. We're working with BJC on some data analytics and data science type projects. That's a great one to plug into. But yeah, I hate to say it, but yeah, healthcare is definitely behind the curve.
I had a feeling that's where you were going to go.
Yes.
And it's difficult because there's so much information sharing and yet so many restrictions on sharing it.
So much information. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so next question is from Dorothy, and it's the classic. As a servant leader that's passionate and compassionate about leading your team, how do you maintain a work-life balance? And I'm going to answer it and say it's all one thing. It seems to be one thing for you, but it's a really good question. How do you stay sane?
Yeah, well, how do I stay sane? I don't know who told you that, Stacy, but I am not sane. I get stressed, I get overwhelmed just like everybody else. But I think the first step truly to this, to answer this question, is to be self-aware. Self-awareness is so important. Know when this is happening. And I laughingly say, but it's the truth. You need to have meetings with yourself. You need to have meetings with yourself from time to time. And you need to ask yourself really, really thoughtful questions. And then be willing to truthfully answer those questions. So for me, and I'm just going to tell you, my faith is central for me. My faith is central, and yours may be something different. It may be getting on a Peloton. Or whatever. But faith is central for me. So I know if I don't have that piece of my life in order, my stool is very wobbly. My stool is off balance. It centers me. It helps me prioritize what's really important. Stacy. And so you ask yourself these really hard questions. What am I doing right now that's draining my energy? What am I doing that gives me joy? So yeah, asking yourself these hard questions.
But one thing I've noticed that you are so good at is gratitude, right? Finding the positive and recognizing how it's a wonderful thing in your life and being grateful for that. Because when you have gratitude, there's not a whole lot of room for much for much negativity.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Gratitude is another force multiplier. I would just tell you, I'll just be really candid and just very open here. But like as a family, we do a gratitude circle every night. And we sit in a circle and people go around the room and say, what am I grateful for today? And it could be tacos, Taco Tuesday, or it could be whatever. The Jonas Brothers would be Allie's answer to that. But, it is, to your point, it is very important to just think about what you do have. And I'm going to go as far as to say, Staci, we all have really hard times in our life too, and adversities. But it's hard to say that you're grateful for those. But I will tell you something.
Yes.
Some of those times are the times that I've grown the most.
It's like we said earlier, nothing inherently good comes from the easy things in life. And so, and I think that this was another question that popped up too. And it came back to the building confidence, and it's do uncomfortable things.
Yes, for sure.
Lisa, it has been such an honor to chat with you this afternoon. I need to wrap us up because I know our audience needs to move on, and we so appreciate the conversation and your views on women and leadership and innovation. Before we go, one thing, Lisa, I don't want to share your information. Are you okay with telling the audience what information you're comfortable sharing?
Absolutely. Yes, please reach out. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn user. I love LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there. Something Extra can be found on every platform. So Android, iTunes, wherever you listen. And I would love for you to be a subscriber and keep up with these amazing leaders that come on to the podcast.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And before we go, I'd like to introduce Carrie Donnelly from WashU Olin's Graduate Admissions Office, and she's going to share a few updates about our program. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Staci. It was a pleasure.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. As Staci mentioned, I'm Carrie Donnelly with WashU Olin's Graduate Admissions team. I'd like to offer another thank you to Lisa and Staci for their insights today on female representation in the tech space, innovation, and values-based data-driven leadership. The discussion today gets to the core of all of Olin's graduate programs. Our executive MBA focuses on leadership. WashU Olin's values-based data-driven approach to leadership is woven throughout the EMBA program curriculum from the very start at Go Week through the final capstone project. EMBA students meet with certified executive leadership coaches throughout the program and even afterwards to create a personalized, actionable leadership development plan and their own higher purpose statement. This highly ranked program produces great business leaders who aim to change the world for good. Our latest EMBA class, starting later this month, is forming now, and I'd like to invite you to learn more about the program in a virtual information session on Wednesday, September 15th. You can register using the short URL on your screen now, and we're also sharing a link in the chat. I also want to mention that we're very excited to announce our new online MBA. This program is 100% online and was designed for working professionals who aim to use digital technology as business strategy. Our online MBA is grounded in the same core principles as our other MBA programs. Courses address current, real-world skills and strategies through the lens of technology driving business today, things like AI, machine learning, and the Internet of Things. The inaugural class is forming now and will start in January 2022. You can learn more about this program in our upcoming virtual information session on Tuesday, September 14th. You can register using the short URL on your screen now, and we're also sharing a link in the chat. In closing, thank you once again for attending today's Leadership Perspectives event, the first of our new academic year. Please join us for our next event on Wednesday, September 29th at noon, where we will hear Olin alumnus Andrew Rubin, CEO and co-founder of Illumio, and Olin professor Michael Wall discuss managing strategy during rapidly changing times while staying focused on delivering results. Watch your email for the invite, and we hope to see you there. Until then, we wish you well. Have a wonderful afternoon.